The dashboard went green all at once. No warning chime, no applause, just a quiet confirmation that the thing I'd been living inside for months was finally standing on its own. I stared at the screen longer than I needed to. The server rack behind me hummed. Steady and warm, someone down the hall burned coffee again. That smell always meant morning meetings. It should have meant relief. Instead, my calendar pinged. Boardroom, 10 minutes. I wiped my hands on my jeans like I'd been working on hardware instead of code and walked down the glass corridor. A couple engineers nodded at me. One of them smiled. I smiled back, already rehearsing how I'd explain the last-minute workaround we'd use to stabilize the model. The CEO didn't wait for me to sit. She folded her hands on the table and said they were making some organizational adjustments. She said the system was live now, and the company needed to move forward leaner. She said my role was no longer necessary. Her voice was even, almost kind. For a second, everything in me surged forward at once. The nights I'd slept on the office couch, the launch deadlines I'd covered for other people, the way my name was never on the slides. Then it all flattened. I smiled. I didn't plan it. It just happened. I said, "Are you sure it belongs to you?" The room shifted. A chair creaked. Someone cleared their throat. The CEO blinked like she hadn't heard me correctly. I didn't explain. I didn't wait. I stood up, gathered my laptop, and walked out while the question was still hanging there, unfinished. In the hallway, my hands finally started to shake. Not from fear, from the sudden absence of pressure. Like when you step off a moving train and the ground feels wrong under your feet. I rode the elevator down alone, watched the numbers drop, thought about how clean it all looked from the outside. My name is Maren Kessler, 33 years old. By the time I reached the street, my phone buzzed with the first message from my team. Then another, then 3 more. I didn't answer any of them yet. I knew what they were about, and I knew why I'd smiled. Some things don't fall apart right away. They just stop listening. People love to say I moved fast, like it was luck. It wasn't. I got hired at 24 because they needed someone to clean up a mess without making noise. That was the pitch. Stabilize it. Scale it. Don't rock the boat. My manager back then told me, "You're young, but you listen." What he meant was, I didn't argue yet. I took the job anyway. 6 months in, the system started behaving. Not flashy. No demos that made people clap. It just stopped breaking. Orders processed on time. Forecasts stopped embarrassing us. The late-night alerts slowed down. At a quarterly review, someone from leadership said, "This is boring now." I said, "That's the point." He laughed, like I'd made a joke. They didn't bring me in to be visible. They brought me in to hold things together while other people talked. When something failed, it was my inbox. When it worked, it was the platform. I remember the first time I asked for authority to block a risky change. The answer came back quick. "You're not wrong." My manager said, lowering his voice, "But you're not senior enough to decide that. Senior enough to carry it, not senior enough to stop it." I stayed. I told myself experience mattered more than titles. That if I kept the system alive long enough, they'd have to see me. That was the part I got wrong. By 29, I wasn't just running logistics. It was making decisions people trusted without checking. No one said that out loud, but I felt it every time a VP asked, "Are we good?" and waited for my nod. I was trusted with everything that mattered, just not with saying no. That imbalance sat there quietly, like a crack you pretend isn't growing, and I let it. Chapter 3. The CEO who spoke fluent confidence. I met her the first week she took the job. She shook my hand and said, "I've reviewed the deck. I like the vision, not the system. The deck, in meetings." She talked in straight lines. Growth, scale, velocity. She never asked how anything worked. She asked how fast we could make it look finished. Once, during a rollout discussion, I said, "If we push this version, the model will drift." She smiled without looking at me. "That's an engineering problem. We're talking strategy? Another time." I warned her the data pipeline couldn't handle live demand spikes yet. She said, "Every product ships imperfect. Confidence matters more than caution." People nodded. I watched them nod. She had a way of ending conversations by sounding like she'd already decided. It wasn't rude. That was the dangerous part. It made you feel small for still thinking. After one board meeting, a VP leaned toward me and whispered, "She's impressive." "Right," I said. "She's decisive." That felt safer. The truth is, I mistook volume for clarity. I thought certainty meant understanding. I told myself she saw a bigger picture I couldn't. That was my mistake. The system kept absorbing responsibility, forecasts, vendor timing, inventory decisions no one wanted to own. Every time I raised a red flag, it got reframed as friction. "We can't slow down for hypotheticals," she told me once. That's how companies lose momentum. I stopped pushing after that, not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to be labeled difficult. She believed ownership came with the title, that if you stood at the top long enough, the work beneath you became yours by default. I believed her. Longer than I should have. The part nobody saw was how loud it got in my head. Every sentence I wanted to say stacked up at once. Every late night, every warning I'd given that got waved off. I felt it rise in my chest, hot and fast, the way it always does right before you say something you can't take back. Then I didn't. The CEO said, "This isn't personal, like that was supposed to help." I nodded. Like I believed her. A long time ago, at my first real job, I watched a senior engineer lose everything in one meeting. He slammed his notebook shut and told the room exactly what he thought of them. Security walked him out. By the end of the week, his access was gone, and his name was already being spoken in past tense. Before he left, he pulled me aside and said, "They build rooms like this for a reason. Noise gets punished, silence gets studied." I remembered that. So when she told me my role was redundant, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue ownership. I didn't point at the system running because of choices I'd made. I smiled. She paused when I did. Just a half second. Enough to notice. "Are you okay with this?" she asked. I said, "I hear you." That wasn't surrender. It was control. I could feel the balance shift, just slightly. When I asked my question, the one about ownership, I didn't push it. I let it sit there. Let it bother her later. People think silence means you've lost, that you've run out of options. Sometimes it just means you already moved. I walked out before the meeting could turn into a performance. I didn't need witnesses. I didn't need approval. I needed time, and I knew I had it. Have you ever stayed quiet because you knew time was on your side? I didn't wake up one day and decide to protect myself. It was slower than that. Quiet. The idea came from a lawyer I almost didn't hire. A friend of a friend, cheap office, bad coffee. He flipped through my diagrams and said, "Who owns the core logic?" I said, "The company. I mean me. Us." He looked at me for a long second. "That answer's doing a lot of work." I laughed. I remember that. Like he was being dramatic. He wasn't. He said, "If they replace you tomorrow, what happens to this?" I said. "They wouldn't." He nodded. "Already writing." That's not an answer. We structured it clean. Separate entity, narrow scope, board approval. No tricks. No shadows. I told myself it was temporary, just until things stabilized. When the paperwork went around, no one read it. The CFO asked. "This standard," the lawyer said. "Very." I said nothing. At one point, my manager asked, "Is this about trust?" I said, "It's about continuity." He signed. I didn't do it because I thought they'd betray me. I did it because I knew they'd replace me the moment the system stopped feeling fragile. People confuse those two things. Loyalty and usefulness. They overlap, but they're not the same. Months later, during a review, the CEO said, "We own the platform now." I corrected her. "We license it." She waved her hand. Same difference. It wasn't. When she fired me, the system didn't shut down out of spite, and it did exactly what it was built to do. It checked who was authorized, then it waited. That wasn't revenge, that was design. I didn't take anything from them, I just stopped lending it. And the part that still sits heavy in my chest is this: they never asked. Not once. Not about ownership, not about risk. They assumed position meant control. I assumed preparation meant safety. One of us was right. Do you protect your work or assume loyalty will protect you? The first message came from Ryan. Something's wrong. The deployment's asking for authorization we don't have. I stared at the screen. Didn't reply. 5 minutes later. Another one. Clients are calling. Dashboards aren't updating. Then my phone started buzzing like it used to during outages. Only this time, my badge didn't work. My access was gone. I was outside the blast radius watching it spread. A junior engineer texted, "Did you lock something on purpose that one hurt?" I typed. Erased. Typed again. No. The system's behaving as designed. He sent back, "That's not helping right now." By noon, the group chat was chaos, people talking over each other. Half answers. Fear. Someone wrote, "The CEO wants an explanation." Someone else replied, "From who a client liaison called me directly." Her voice was tight. "We're getting pressure from procurement. They want to know if this is temporary." I said, "It is." She asked, "How long?" I said, "That depends on who's asking." Silence. I kept seeing faces. People I'd pulled aside late at night to fix things quietly. People I'd promised stability. They were the ones fielding the anger now, not the executives who made the call. Ryan called again. This time he didn't try to sound calm. "They're blaming us," he said. "They're saying engineering failed to transition." I said, "I warned them. I know." He snapped, then softer. "That doesn't help me right now." That's when it shifted. Up until then, I'd been angry, sharp, clean anger. Easy to carry. Now it got heavier, messier. This wasn't about proving a point anymore. It was about damage control. I called the lawyer. He picked up on the second ring. They triggered the clause, he said cleanly. "So I'm not wrong." I said, "You're not wrong." He repeated. Then paused. "But being right doesn't keep people employed." I sat there after we hung up. Phone in my lap, listening to nothing. The system wasn't broken. The company was... I didn't want revenge. I wanted them to stop bleeding through people who never made the decision. That's when resolve showed up. Not loud, just steady. I wasn't going back, but I wasn't walking away either. HR called the next morning. Her voice was soft, careful, like she was talking to someone on the edge of something. "Marin, we just want to check in. Make sure you're okay." I said, "I'm fine." She paused, then tried again. "There's been some confusion since the transition." Transition. That word always shows up when someone else caused damage. "We were hoping," she said, "you might be open to a short consulting arrangement, just to help stabilize things." I didn't answer right away. She kept going. 30 days, $200,000. Clean scope. I pictured the team's messages. The panic. The way they were being blamed for decisions they never made. "That's not about stabilization," I said. "That's about access." Another pause. Longer this time. "We can revisit the number," she said. 400,000, maybe more. The money climbed. The language didn't change. No apology. No acknowledgement. Just urgency wrapped in politeness. "What exactly would you need from me?" I asked. She exhaled. Relieved. "Authorization? Oversight? Your credentials." There it was. They didn't want me back. They wanted the keys. Temporary. Disposable. Useful again? Just long enough to unlock the door. "I won't do that," I said. Her tone shifted. "Sharper now?" "Marin, people's jobs are on the line." "I know," I said. "That's why this isn't a consulting problem." Silence. I could hear her breathing. "So that's a no," she asked. "It's a no," I said, not angry, just done. When the call ended, I sat there longer than I needed to. My hands were steady this time. That surprised me. They finally saw my value and still missed the point. I didn't hang up feeling powerful. I hung up feeling clear. There's a difference. The call came from a number I didn't recognize. "I'll be quick," the man said. "My name's Daniel. I lead systems at a company, you know. We've been watching." I almost laughed. "Watching what?" "The way your platform behaves when leadership changes," he said, "and the way you left." That got my attention. He didn't pitch. He asked questions. Real ones. How did you handle model drift under live demand? What did you do when procurement tried to override forecasts? What fails first if authorization breaks? I answered before I realized I was answering. It felt like muscle memory waking up. Daniel said, "You built it to refuse bad instructions." I said, "I built it to survive them." He didn't argue. He nodded. Even over the phone, I could hear it. "We're not calling to rush you," he said. "No timelines. No numbers today." I waited anyway. "We want to understand what alignment would look like for you," he added. "Not access. Not a patch. Alignment." I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. No one had said that word to me in years. "Why now?" I asked. "Because your old company keeps asking how to make the system listen again," he said. "And we're more interested in why it ever stopped." That landed. Hard. He didn't promise anything. He didn't need to. He just said, "If you want to talk, we'll make space." When the call ended, my phone felt lighter in my hand. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't proving anything. For the first time since the firing, I felt seen for the right reasons. Not as a risk, not as a problem, as a choice. The meeting wasn't dramatic. That surprised me. Daniel sat across from me with two lawyers I'd never met and one I knew too well. My lawyer slid a stack of papers toward me like this was groceries. "Not my life rearranged." Daniel said, "Before we start, I want to be clear, but we're not buying leverage. We're buying authorship," I said. "Then you're buying all of it?" He nodded. "That's the only version we want." The lawyers talked for a while. Words like transfer, exclusivity, continuity. I listened for the parts that mattered. Daniel leaned in at one point and said, "Once this is signed, your old company loses the right to call the system theirs." I said, "They never had that right." He didn't argue. I signed my name more times than felt reasonable. My hand didn't shake. That surprised me too. When it was done, no one clapped. No one smiled. Daniel just said, "We'll wire the funds within 48 hours. I nodded. Like that was normal. It wasn't until I was alone in the car that the number finally landed. $760 million. It didn't feel heavy. It didn't feel real. It felt quiet, like a door closing somewhere far away. My phone rang before I started the engine. It was the CEO. I let it ring twice before answering. "You went behind our backs," she said. Her voice wasn't confident anymore. It was tight. I left. I said, "You made sure of that. You sold company property. I sold mine. You're destroying us." I looked at the windshield. "No, I'm finishing something." She went silent. I could hear her breathing. I wondered if she was finally reading the paperwork she'd signed without looking. This could have been avoided. She said, I said, I hung up before she could say my name again. Control doesn't always change hands with a fight. Sometimes it just shifts when someone stops pretending. By the time I drove away, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even relieved. I just felt done. The money hit my account 2 days later. My bank called to confirm it wasn't a mistake. The woman on the line kept saying my name like she was trying to anchor it to something normal. $760 million. She said, "That's correct." "Yeah," I said, "That's correct." After that, everyone had an opinion. Old coworkers texted congratulations like it was a graduation. A former VP left a voicemail saying, "No hard feelings." I didn't call him back. Daniel checked in once. "We'll move at your pace," he said. I said, "Good. I'm not sprinting anymore." He understood that. I took a week before I did anything. No press, no victory lap. I went to the same coffee place I always did and ordered the same thing. The barista asked if I wanted my usual. That grounded me more than the balance in my account. People assume the money fixed everything. It didn't. It just removed the noise. What changed was choice. I didn't have to justify caution anymore. I didn't have to ask permission to slow down. I didn't have to keep proving I belonged in rooms that were built to doubt me. Here's the part. No one warns you about winning doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like quiet. And in that quiet, you finally hear yourself. I made mistakes. I stayed too long. I trusted tone over substance. I confused opportunity with obligation. If I could tell you anything from the other side of this, it's this: protect what you build before someone decides they're done needing you. I'm not disappearing. I'm choosing differently. If this story hit close to home, talk about it, share it. Someone you know might need to hear that silence isn't surrender and walking away doesn't mean losing. I didn't walk away with everything. I walked away with myself.